Another one. Another one. Touchdown Jags! Ball game!
Another Jags podcast.
What's up, everyone? It is episode 61 of another Jags podcast. We are excited tonight to have our full crew with us, Joey, Jason, and myself. Going to be talking basically about your questions, what you've submitted on Twitter and on Facebook. We have our very first Facebook questions this week, and we are just thrilled about that. Before we get to all those things, we want to remind everyone, maybe this is the first time that you've heard our podcast, we are on Twitter at Another Jags Pod, and we are also on Facebook and Instagram at Another Jags Podcast. You can also listen to our episodes on YouTube. Just search Another Jags Podcast, and all of the episodes will be there. We love to include everybody in this show, not just the three of us. So send us your questions, your comments, and we will absolutely include them.
Can I make a quick plug for the Twitter?
Please.
Okay, if you're one of those people that like lives on Twitter, like myself, you need to follow our Twitter because this is the time of year I post draft clips. So I'm going to be doing cut-ups of draft picks and guys the Jags bring in for interviews and things like that. So if you're a Twitter nut, you want to make sure you follow us. There's going to be some good videos coming.
And I like to plug the YouTube because YouTube is like the best way to react to our podcast, because as it comes out, there's multiple people commenting on what's being said, and we answer that. So we've got social media platforms for questions, and then YouTube's a great way to interact after it comes out. So do it all.
It sounded like a planned spot.
It really
but it was
is
not.
not.
It wasn't.
That was like spur of the moment.
Yeah, okay. Just
As is everything that we say on here.
We have no plan, guys. It just all comes together.
Yeah, so check us out on all those things and give us any feedback that you have. We'd love to hear from it, good or bad. And we will absolutely play both. I promise you that. We're going to be talking about the draft. We're going to be talking about current players that the Jags might want to look at, former Jags, where they're going, and should the Jags bring them back, all those things. But right now, the headline is the draft. We are a month away from the draft, and so that's really what we want to lead with. That's what we're going to talk about the most. So let's do that. Jason, do you have some questions from Twitter regarding the draft, the upcoming 2019 NFL draft?
we do. The question from G Buckets, and he's at Gunner_Gentry, says that who is the best fitting pick in the first round of the draft for the Jags?
In other words, who do we think they should take?
Who's the best fitting pick?
See, I love that question because I've been saying for weeks that we don't draft best available, we draft for need. So again, it's Hawkinson. He's got it all. What's with baseball? Like five-way player? He's that guy.
Five tool.
Whatever. I don't like baseball. He's that guy as far as the tight end goes. Yeah, you don't take a tight end at 7, but to answer that question, that's who you take if you are drafting for need.
I mean, I understand how like the national and like the local, everyone thinks that we're going to take Hawkinson. Like everyone wants Hawkinson. They did a poll today on the radio that, and it like overwhelmingly was everybody wants Hawkinson. And I get it. He's a very attractive pick, but you have to remember that every year a tight end goes early in the draft with hopes that he's going to be the next Rob Gronkowski. And it never happens. It never happens. There are 3 elite tight ends in the NFL. That's it. Every team tries to have 2 or 3 on their roster. I mean, look at these athletic guys that we pick up throughout the year. Blake Bell. These guys that we think, oh, they're athletes. They could turn into the next basketball player tight end that dominates. But it just does not happen. You have 3 elite ones. Kittle, Ertz, and Kelsey. Besides those 3 guys, everyone else is pedestrian. Everyone else is pedestrian. You can make an argument that these guys might be good. You can make an argument that this guy has been good, but none of them are on the level of those 3 guys. So for the best fitting for this team, I think you have to take a tackle. We have glaring holes on the right side. Can is a liability, and we have no right tackle. So I say you draft the guy who fits the scheme the most, and that's Jonah Williams, the tackle from Alabama. Fundamental, can play left tackle or right tackle. If he ends up being better than Cam Robinson, you can push Cam to the right and move this guy to left. The same can't be said for Juwan Taylor. Like, you don't know if he can play left. He played a little bit, but he still hasn't even shown that he can master the position. Jonah Williams has shown he's a master of the position. He can give you something. Even if it's interior or solid depth, he can give you something that you can use.
And I'm not going to argue with that at all. I would be 100% okay with that. The problem is that most people are saying that we're getting a defensive player at number 7. We're getting an edge rusher or somebody that's going to go on the defensive line. If they draft that at 7, I'm not sure how I'm going to handle that.
Well, you better start figuring it out because that's what they are going to do, and I believe that is what they should do.
That's not the question. The question is the fit. Do you think that's the fit for us? It could be, but for me, I think that might be the smartest pick because there could be a really good player there at D-line, but I don't think that's the best fit.
To me, the best fit is getting the best player.
Okay.
And the best player is going to be a defensive player.
What if you have a scenario like Fowler and Ngakoue, though, where you have 2 guys you'd love to have on the field every play, but you can't because they literally are the exact same position? Do you fear running into that at all?
Fowler and Ngakoue were on the field at the same time over 60% of the time on defense.
Exactly. But what about the other 40%? If you're going to draft a guy in the top 7, you want a guy.
Well, let me ask you this:
100%.
besides right tackle, to Joey's point, I mean, how often is Hawkinson going to be? I know he's going to block and all that stuff, but to me, I'm just going to go back to this:
blocking all
tight end. Well, as a tight end, as can block. The value of a tight end and even a right tackle. Jason, you're saying that you could probably do both Williams, left or right. It's just not there at number 7, and that's why I'm not even going to entertain looking into it. If they take Hawkinson at 7, I'm not going to be super mad and disappointed about that. I just don't think they're going to because I don't think the position demands that sort of value at 7. I just don't see that happening. And that is going along with what Jason says. I think they can get where they sit in the second round, a high second round pick. They can get a tight end there, but at number 7. When you have the pick of the litter for the best players in all the draft, you take the best player and you figure out how to put him on the field.
Fair enough. But the question needs to be expanded to: do you draft according to what's best for next year or what's best for the future? Because every decision up to this point has been made to win next year, which is what most people. I mean, you can't have both.
And I think you win next year by taking the best player.
I mean, Foles definitely told us that they're trying to win next year by the signing of Foles. So that's what they're thinking for the draft.
So if you sign a defensive player that might be ancillary, that's going to be for next year?
I don't think if they're that good, they're going to be ancillary. And you listen, we also don't know. Injuries happen, and we don't know what's the depth on the defensive line. Who's to say that if they get the guy that he's going to be second string the entire year? What if he ends up being better than Ngakoue? Takes his position.
Okay, so that's the question. If he's Ngakoue, so let's say it's Rashawn Gary. I know a lot of the NFL Network has us mocked to take Rashawn Gary. I'm an idiot. So he's literally in Ngakoue's position. I don't know if either one of those 2 guys can play the other side. I'm not sure what the scheme is, but they've shown in the past that Calais Campbell is the big edge to take on the strong side, to take on 2 blocks and to let the backside D end make plays like Ngakoue. If Rashawn Gary is that same player and you plan on re-signing Ngakoue, how can you take Rashawn Gary? I just
don't. That's like
I'm asking James because James says best available player. I mean,
but that's a redundancy. That's
do you put him on the other side and hope someone works out on the other side? What do you do?
Well, I know this. I mean, do we know for sure who what's going to happen with Ngakoue on this team?
No, we don't. But we all like to think, and I think we all like to think that he's going to be at least what he was last year, which is pretty good. Even if it doesn't improve.
Do you want pretty good what he is, or could you go for elite?
When our offense sucks as bad as it does, pretty good's good enough on defense in that position, in my mind.
Not when you are saying you are going to win with defense.
I don't think they're saying they're going to win with defense next year. We just went out and spent a ton of money on a Pro Bowl or MVP.
You can do it, Joey. Come on.
I'm so baffled by the fact that you want a defensive player drafted in the first 10 picks.
I'm not saying I want a defensive player. I'm saying that the way to draft, especially when you're in the top 10, is to take the best player. You don't pass on an elite talent because you need to fill a need somewhere else.
So you're happy with the Taven Bryan pick last year?
No, because that was neither. Taven Bryan was
supposed to go way ahead of us, and he didn't.
Taven Bryan was not a need or a value. It was just a bad pick.
Oh, at that pick, he was the best available. That's why they took him.
No, he wasn't.
He really was.
No, he was not.
10 picks above us.
We had never heard of him.
No, I think they definitely saw him as the best available.
Well, that's the problem.
Yeah,
that is the problem. He wasn't the best available.
That's a whole.
That's a whole other
different
thing.
Bowl of soup.
That's a whole other thing. If that was their strategy, okay, but they just missed. And that, again, like Joey just said, that's a whole other ball of wax.
There's a Facebook question about the defensive line, isn't there?
There is. So let's jump
get
back
to that since we're talking D-line.
Can we just pause a second and realize that this is our first ever Facebook question?
I'll say we actually have two. And
okay.
I'll just throw both the names out there just because I appreciate it. And it was kind words thrown at us. So we got Nick D'Amico. Thank you for posting on there. And then the question we're going to address right now is from Dane Jansen. And says he enjoys the podcast. So again, appreciate that. His question is, who's a player in the draft that could be a replacement for Calais Campbell? Which,
hey, I have one. His name's Taven Bryan. He's really good. You guys are. We tried to put him at DN last year, and he isn't a DN. He's a D tackle.
Right.
So when they did the smart thing, like they actually took James's strategy, and James refuses to admit it. But the best available player was.
You guys honestly think when Taven Bryan was selected that he was the best player?
He was. He was supposed to go like 12
he was better
picks above
than.
us.
I don't think you understand
You think
how
Taven Bryan-
athletic he is. Like this dude, think of like a freak athlete at whatever position, right? So that is how he's viewed.
Okay, so if that's right, then I'm right.
Then we should
because
have this year.
They let Malik Jackson go. They saved all that money, and now they're filling with a freak athlete, as you put it, to fill his role. That's going to now be better than Malik Jackson.
I've never disagreed with you. I think the D-line is the smartest pick.
Okay, I am disagreeing though because Taven Bryan helped us zero this past year.
But he's a project player.
Okay,
he was drafted as a project player.
It's back to the: are we drafting to win next year?
But we're not drafting at 29 this year. We're drafting at 7. That's a huge difference.
Exactly.
It still comes down to, are we looking to win next year? Or are we looking to win in the next 2, 3, 4 years?
No. I'm saying the talent that you're going to get at number 7 is going to be a lot different than the talent you get at 29, even when you're picking best available. So the guy at 7 is going to make a way bigger impact, or at least he should if the front office knows what they're doing, than the guy at 29.
And I agree. As long as he's an offensive player, I don't care what position it is.
You have to remember too, last year in the draft, sorry Jason, that
you should be, because my point is fired.
The expectations last year in the draft were we are building upon what we already have. And then the house of cards fell. This year is different. All right. And I think that's where you're coming from, is like all this last year was like, hey, we're going to add to what we already have. We're awesome. We just made it into the AFC Championship game. We should have been in the Super Bowl. It's different now, but I still think the same strategy applies. And so
my point is with James's, and I was just going to say, you got to think Taven Bryan was drafted late and everyone drafted them as a project. Where we're drafting now, these guys aren't project guys. Like we knew Taven was a project, so this year we could take a D lineman that we know is pro ready. That was the only what I was going to say.
I'm not saying take a project guy. I'm saying take the best available offensive guy. I don't care what position it is. I mean, somewhat. If the best available offensive guy is there, we take him. We need him. I mean, you say that the expectations are different. Yeah, they're different because we had a crap year last year, but we're basing everything now going forward on the fact that, hey, we had a crap year because of injuries, and we had a crap year because Bortles didn't pan out like he was supposed to. So we fixed Bortles. Injuries are not going to, they're healthy again. So the expectation should be we're back to where we were 2 years ago. Draft to win the Super Bowl.
Let me ask you this. Do you really think that it's, with the signing of Nick Foles, does that make this upcoming year win or bust for the front office? Or can they show progress? Or are they saying, hey, we've just signed a 30-year-old quarterback to a 4-year contract. We don't have to win next year. We don't have to. We want to see progress. We want to, obviously, we want to try and win. But if we don't make it to the even second round of the playoffs or win the division, that's okay, because we are now we have our quarterback in place. Finally, we have an opportunity at number 7 to draft an elite talent. Okay. So do we do that and then build on that for the following years to come? Remember, this isn't a 1-year deal for Foles. It's really at minimum, it's a 2-year, but they have him for 4. So we're assuming that they have to win next year and they have to, do all this. But do they? Is that really what their mentality is?
I think with the defense we have, the contracts coming up, the taking Foles, and the sketchy year we had last year, absolutely. If Caldwell and Marone are still there and we go whatever, 6-7 wins next year, I'd be amazed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they are drafting for their jobs because the fan base is getting kind of impatient with them already. There was some people that you were calling for their jobs this year. I am a skeptic of this staff. I really am. And I don't know if they will make the right decision this offseason. And I think if they have another year, if they win 6 games next year, I think they should be fired. If they win 7, honestly, that's improvement and people are going to try to twist it that way. But we have a defense that should be able to stop anybody. I mean, so 7 wins is unacceptable to me.
Look at the writing on the wall. The fall guys have already happened. I mean, running backs coach, offensive coordinator, gone. Probably a couple others that I can't think of off the top of my head, but everybody that could have been like shipped out was, except for the main guys. And this is their year. They're drafting that way. They're making free agency decisions based on that. Absolutely, they have to win this year. And everything's going to be revolved around that.
I think how they drafted 7 is going to be very telling in that.
I don't think it's a question.
I know what's not a question. It's who won that argument. It was me.
Only because you're the host, James.
This staff seems kind of arrogant to me. I mean, maybe not to everyone else, but they seem pretty arrogant. Anyone that will come out in 2018 and say we're going to run the ball and play defense, it has to be at least a little arrogant, right?
Absolutely are. I mean, that's what is great about Marone is that he's arrogant.
So maybe these guys do draft the D lineman thinking they're fine. I mean, who knows what these guys are. Man, they're tough to know. I mean, they don't lay their cards out the way like Cliff Kingsbury does. These guys, right. they keep everything pretty tight.
This does tie into a Facebook question perfectly, so I'm going to go ahead and take the segue there.
Nice
Mr.
job,
Nick
nice.
D'Amico. Yeah. What are your throw your beer at a TV picks in the first round?
I don't throw anything in my TV.
I don't know about the TV.
55 inch.
Maybe chuck it at a tree.
Yeah.
But
so what's the question? Is it someone that I would like, or is it someone?
No. Like if they draft this person, you lose your mind.
Oh,
I'm gonna actually. I've done a complete 180 on this because I think 2 episodes ago I said this is who I think they should and will take, and now I'm saying please don't. Is Jawan Taylor actually? For everything that I've seen, stuff that
you would really lose your mind over Jawan Taylor.
I would.
I think I would. I think you said you would.
Absolutely.
Okay, especially if Williams is there.
A lot of people are mocking Williams to be after. I think he's a better player, but most mocks have.
Absolutely a better player.
It would be hard at 7 for me to lose my mind over anybody. It would have to be like a Alu type. Who is this person type pick?
Like a Blake Bortles
of the ones that have been. Like Daniel Jones maybe.
I was gonna say Drew Lock. I'd lose my mind if we drafted Drew Lock.
Yeah,
because then what are we doing at the quarterback position? Right. I don't think that'll happen, but you're asked. Mm-hmm. So if Drew Lock or Daniel Jones or Will Greer, who knows what they're gonna do? If one of these guys comes off the board, then I'm losing my mind.
I'm a big Greer fan, but we take him at 7. I would say that. But I mean, just like based on what we've seen, I agree. I mean, Taylor is not impressed whatsoever. I'm a Gator fan. He never stood out in games at all. I mean, the big thing they say about him is that his punch is great. Like, getting off the line, he knocks people in the chest and they feel it. But I mean, okay, great. But then you didn't do much in college. I mean, I would not be happy with that. I said beforehand, weeks ago, that I do not want us to draft a Florida football player in the first round ever again, unless he's just that guy. They just don't work out. I mean, I get the state thing. It probably brings fans in, all that. But no, I don't want them to take them. I'm good, again, with any offensive player that isn't a stretch. I will lose my mind if we draft defense in the 7th pick. Plain and simple.
Just can't wait.
Can I defend Jawan Taylor for a second here?
Sure.
All right. First of all.
So you got quick release? Oh, sorry, that's quarterbacks.
First of all.
Blocking?
First of all, Joey, you said he brings fans. You think the Jags care if he brings fans or not? Why would the Jags? What is it, 20 fans? What does that care to them?
Well, because we go.
He brings fans? Who cares?
We win
that?
5 games again next season. We're going to need some fans in the stands.
Okay, I think they should draft Jonah Williams. But if they draft Jawan Taylor, and they might, I don't think people should freak out. And here's why, okay? At UF, the entire offensive line only allowed 18 sacks the entire season. That's pretty good. Okay. And he can play left tackle or right tackle, right? And the thing is like he's not like Andrew Norwell this year graded out like in the 90s in pass blocking, but then graded out in the 50s in run blocking. So This guy can play both really well. So you don't have to worry about like, oh, certain plays, I can't go to this side. He does the run and the pass blocking like equally well. He has comps to a lot of people that were really, really, really good because he has this massive frame that is already really good at offensive linemen. And they see, and NFL coaches see this massive frame and they're like, holy crap, when I get a hold of this in individual drills, this dude will be the best offensive lineman in the league. And the thing about that is that usually works out with offensive line position. It doesn't always, but it does more than any other position. When we think about trying to do that with a receiver or even a quarterback, we're like, ooh, like Matt Jones, like sometimes these athletes don't really translate well, but offensive line, they translate better than any other position as far as that goes. So don't be upset if Jawan Taylor gets picked because he could be a really good tackle. And he could replace Cam Robinson. People are assuming Cam Robinson is going to come back and be our solid left tackle. If he comes back and is like needs some time, they could swap those guys.
Taylor didn't play left tackle in college ever.
He played left tackle a lot though. When he was a redshirt sophomore, redshirt freshman, he moved over. I mean, his play style is he can only play tackle, but he is. I mean,
I'll take your word for that.
Yeah, he's a big dude.
But you know who else can run block really well? Hawkinson.
Is that a mic drop moment?
I don't know, dude.
Dude,
I mean,
he's a better run blocker than he is a pass catcher. That's why he is the perfect pick for that spot.
Well, this offense doesn't call for a blocking tight end anymore. We have a new offensive coordinator who likes to run shotgun every single play, and they don't need a run blockers the way that we used to. From a tight end position. This guy, look where he's been. His last two tight ends in his offense have been Zach Ertz and Kyle Rudolph. You think he wants a blocking tight end? No, this dude wants to do. I mean, if they draft Hawkinson with the thinking that he could be that why tight end, but
well, fair enough. I mean, if our offensive coordinator is making the call on our 7th round pick, then there you go.
Listen, I'll say it again. I'm not going to lose my mind if they do draft Hawkinson. I just really don't think they will. No one's listening to me. No one's listening
James,
to me.
I'm sorry, were you talking?
I said the best point ever.
sorry, we enjoy.
Can you say that one more time?
What's happening? Like, I'm totally having your own conversation there.
I was apologizing to Jason because that was a low blow.
And I wasn't paying attention, so now I feel real bad.
I don't know what I was saying. Now I lost all train of thought.
You were talking.
No, it's fine.
We talked about Hawkinson.
Move on.
Talking about Hawkinson. Then
Yeah, whatever. We'll find out in a month what they're going to do. We got 3 more episodes or so to.
I think we do have lots more questions though, right, Jason?
Yeah, sorry. Okay. All right. Well, this next question to end our D-line discussion is from Manny, and he's at Manny Samiti. And he says, if the Jags go D-end with number 7 to have a cheaper/younger guy on the D-line for the future, would you choose Rashawn Gary, Josh Sweat, or Brian Burns?
Actually, I will say something about this. I'll jump in real quick. I mean, doesn't like the McCray Smoot combo, I mean, they played pretty well, like filling in, right? I mean, do we really
McCray was okay in very limited snaps.
They were good enough at the snaps they got. So do we really want to sell the house for that?
You really want to hang your hat on that?
But what are you going to sell your house for on the other end? And also risky tight end? Like, it goes both ways. And these guys are, I mean, it's a defensive line heavy draft. Everyone thinks these guys are more confident in them than anyone else. So, I mean, there's risk on both ends.
So I don't know the answer to this. What is the like upside? How well do rookies play straight away defensive line? Plug him in day one.
It depends on who it is. Some guys come in. I mean, look at Ngakoue. He was legit his rookie year. And then his second, you never know. I mean, it's a risk. It's a risk for both sides.
I'd almost rather they go middle linebacker at some point before they pick that. I mean, that's more of a need to me. So I don't know, man. I'm the wrong guy to ask for that because I'm obviously don't want that to happen.
Well, let's answer the question then, rather than this whole back.
Sorry,
and forth.
had to throw shade on that first.
And I mean, are you guys listening to me now?
Yeah,
You're actually going to listen to what I say?
We're listening.
Okay. I'm going to say, and this is total bias, but I'm going to say Burns just because that's who I saw more than anyone else because he played for Florida State. But I have to say this is also why Florida State was a dumpster fire last year. And if you watched any of their games, he stood out. I mean, teams should have gone in playing FSU and said, "Stop Burns, and we're going to destroy them." And he made play after play after play. I mean, he was unreal. And now I think he played at like 235 last year. I think he's added 20 pounds or something since then. He weighed in the combine around 250. If he's bigger and can maintain the speed, which he did, at least in his 40, I think he could be a dangerous player. Obviously, I say that, full disclosure, as a Florida State fan. I don't know the other two guys nearly as well, but watch out for Burns. I mean, I think he could be legit DN.
I think Brian Burns will be good, but I don't think he is a guy that is elite. Like, you have Quinnen Williams and Nick Bosa. If either one of those guys are at the Jags pick, obviously Bosa won't be, but if Quinnen Williams is there, I think you have to take Quinnen Williams. I mean, he stands out as one of the best defensive linemen I've seen in a while coming out of college. Like, eyeball test, he's dominant. But when it comes to those three that you mentioned, I haven't really watched a lot of Josh Allen. I mean, I watched a couple Kentucky games. He didn't really stand out.
Was Josh Allen in one of those three? I thought
he wasn't. He wasn't. Rashawn Gary, he's a decent player, but I think he's the exact same player as Yannick Ngakoue. He's like an Ezekiel Anza comp guy. And so I think you'd have problems with him and Ngakoue playing at the same time.
I don't trust players out of Michigan for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
They scare me a little bit.
Yeah. Josh Sweat is a good player. And I think he's better than Brian Burns. So, I mean, Sweat would be the guy I would want out of those three. The thing with Burns is I've watched a lot of both these teams, and Burns and Ja'Kai Polite, the guy from Florida, look a lot alike to me. Like, the way they play, their play style, their size, everything. Like, they look alike to me. And I think they're going to end up being about the same. I mean, they're not mocked terribly far from each other, because Ja'Kai Polite will probably be a first-round pick.
I read today Polite is dropped to day 3.
No, there's no
because
way.
He hurt himself at the pro.
Oh
day.
yeah, he did have that. Was a quad or hamstring injury?
But I think it's more about his professionalism. Like, GMs across the board, like, this guy is going to be the worst professional football player
maybe
ever.
Yeah, maybe. But his talent, I mean, then maybe there is that aspect to it. But if his talent alone is the level of Brian Burns, in my opinion. But Josh Sweat, to answer that question, would be a great pick. I mean, I would love that. He could play the big end, replace one of these other guys, and he could play all along the D line. He played on that like hybrid Mississippi State D line where like people were like random sizes all over the place. So that's the answer, from my opinion.
Sorry, I didn't hear any of that. I was looking up our offensive ranking last year versus our defensive one, and was completely blacked out.
I think, Joey, you've made your point. As bad as it is,
no need to beat a dead horse.
Yeah.
All right, this next question is from King, and he's at the Noah Bennett. And he says, I've seen others talk about it on Twitter, but why hasn't TJ Yeldon had any free agency buzz?
I mean, it's kind of obvious. I mean, yeah, the guy was our go-to for the first half of the season, but as soon as things started going downhill, I mean, he checked out. Especially, I mean, he was on the sideline joking around in that last game. Poor professionalism on top of the fact that he never really lived up to his potential. I mean, why would you spend anything on that guy unless you had to? With that being said, I do think as we get closer to, camps and everything like that, he probably will be picked up because somebody's going to get injured. Somebody's going to need somebody, but you're not going to pay that guy top dollar at this point. He's going to have to earn that with incentives.
All right, Joey, let me counter question you. Okay. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
This is from the Kenny at KNNTHP3. He says, do you think the Jags will re-sign TJ Yeldon or Corey Grant? He also says, or do you think they'll go for a spell back late in the draft? He says right now the backfield is Fournette and Rawls, and they're both injury prone.
No way in a million years do they re-sign Yeldon. Grant, I would say they do, outside of the fact that they've got medical information on him that probably nobody else does. I mean, that injury he had, was it the Liz Frank?
Yeah.
Liz Frank. I mean, that's serious. Like, people don't come back from that. You don't play sports ever again if it doesn't heal right. If they know that, then they won't sign him. But if they do, if he's healthy, I mean, why wouldn't you? You can get him for super cheap, and he's completely a different back than anybody we have, and he knows the system, and he's been a good dude. I mean, absolutely, I think we get him back.
Yeah, Yeldon completely sealed his fate with the Jaguars in the last game of the season, which is why you don't do that, because you don't know what the future holds. If he had acted with any professionalism, there's a good chance, maybe they did bring him back and they could use him, because right now the running back room is rather thin. I don't have a lot of hope in the Leonard Fournette, Thomas Rawls combination in terms of like that being it. I think Fournette if his head's in the game and he's healthy, he's dominant. Rawls, I don't know. He's had some injuries that could cause concern. So you never know what could have happened, but now we do know what is not going to happen, and that's the Jags bringing Yeldon back. I think Coughlin made that very clear with his statements after the season. As far as Grant, I kind of echo what Joey said. If he's healthy, maybe, I don't know if DiFilippo wants someone like that, but I like Grant. I if he's healthy, I would love for them to bring him back. Whether they do or not remains to be seen.
Well, the only issue with Grant is you have to bring him back at like a contract that's like at like $1 million or $2 million, and I mean he could be good for that, but you could also draft a guy between rounds 3 and 7 and pay the guy like rookie minimum, and he could probably give you what Grant will give you. So when they're looking at it that way, I think they'll probably draft a guy in the late round. But we had some questions, we had some tweets about the running back position in our offense, and it doesn't take long to figure out that what Fournette has traditionally played his whole career and what John DiFilippo runs in his offense are like almost polar opposites. So what do you guys think is going to happen at running back? Because like some of you kind of mentioned on it already, but just to clarify, do you think Fournette will change into this offense, or do you think they'll have to bring in a guy that can be like a receiving back?
Well, I mean, I've been the biggest Fournette critic out of anybody for the most part. I mean, hasn't lived up to his potential, was not happy with him last year, would have loved to have seen him go, but the talent level that he has, yeah, he didn't do that much at LSU, and we didn't use him like that a ton, but I think that was more Bortles' ability to make adjustments and throw that touch pass or throw that to a space instead of to the guy type of thing. When he did catch the ball, I mean, he definitely showed he can do that, and he did have some plays that were pretty explosive doing that. I don't think he'll have an issue at all if his head's right making that transition. And kind of to jump in on this, because I've knocked him so much, I actually had a conversation with a guy today that was pretty interesting that ties into Fournette. They were talking about, he was actually talking about like an addict, somebody who's like recovering from like a drug addiction or alcohol addiction. The first thing they say to those guys is you've got to get away from all your friends and all the people in your circle. You've got to remove yourself from those people. Fournette going to the mountains or wherever he's at, the train, is actually a good sign in my mind. I actually like it now, listening to this, like translating to that. Maybe he is doing what he's supposed to. He's getting away from everybody that's telling him he's the man, always has been the man, and trying to get his head right on what he needs to do coming forward. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt at this point and say, yes, he can.
Yeah, I mean, besides all that, the training Rocky IV style and all that stuff, I've been impressed with how he catches the ball out of the backfield. I've yet to see him really be bad at that. Like he said when he was at LSU, it's not the offense they ran, so he didn't have the opportunity. But every time that he has been given that opportunity, I mean, I'd say for the most part, I'm not saying he's batting 1,000, but he's impressed in terms of being that pass catching running back. So I'm not sure if that's what you still need another guy. And I'm not sure if Rawls is that or not. So, and did Jason answer your question, or whomever's it was? What are they going to do? I could see a 5th round running back, being taken, something like that. Get later on in the draft, like you should do with a running back. Maybe even 3rd round if they feel they need it that much. But I don't think they're going to go that high. I could see maybe a 5th round running back drafted.
All right, so I have a counter question for you, James.
Okay,
this is a Twitter question, and it has to do with that. And this is from Michael Harrison, and he's at Mike Tubbs H. He says, does the fact that Minnesota had the 30th rushing offense in the league worry you at all? Does that tell you more about the players in Minnesota or DiFilippo's run scheme?
It doesn't concern me at all, because then you could counter that with saying that he also helped coach, the Eagles to a Super Bowl the year before that.
But he was the quarterback coach.
He was.
Fair, he wasn't the offensive coordinator.
I think Minnesota was, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a Minnesota Vikings expert, but they brought in Kirk Cousins. Dalvin Cook gets hurt. It was a kind of a weird year for them last year. I'd say that's more players than it is scheme. I'm everything that I'm hearing about DiFilippo, especially with Nick Foles, the dynamic between those two is going to be incredible. He's going to be incredible. And so, no, I'm not worried about what he did in Minnesota at all.
No, I'm not either. I mean, Cousins' numbers were actually really good. I mean, they didn't translate to wins, but his numbers were good. I mean, Dalvin Cook goes down. I mean, your running game is going to get hurt severely. I mean, that was their backup, back at that point. So, yeah.
let's not forget that he was fired after week 13.
Sure.
So, I mean, if the passing offense was that good, he wouldn't have been fired after 13
There's
weeks.
lots of other stuff to go into that. I mean, he could have disagreed with his offensive coordinator on the scheme they were running, and he was tired of it.
He was the offensive coordinator.
Sorry. He could have disagreed with the head coach on what they were doing or whatever. I mean, there could have just been internal stuff we don't know about.
It was just like here. They paid $1 bazillion for a quarterback to lead them back to the promised land. They fell well short of that, and the coordinators are always going to be the guys whose heads roll first. I mean, that's what happened in Jacksonville. I mean, that's why Hackett's not here. You know, those guys are more expendable, and so that's what they did. They fired their offensive coordinator. You know, they brought him in for Foles. They didn't bring him in because of a great running scheme. They brought him in for Nick Foles. Period.
Is that too risky?
I mean, is anybody going to argue about seeing a different offense next year? Like, be upset about that?
It's just going to be weird because we all think it will be different. That's why we're asking, what do you think Fournette's role is going to be? Like, we all expect it to be different. The shotgun out of 90% of the time, a lot of running back passes. The question is can Fournette be that?
He's honestly one of the least concerns I have in that offense next year. I think.
What about his durability?
Again, if they're winning and doing well, and he's got his head straight, it has nothing to do with his role. It has to do with him mentally and what he wants to accomplish. He can if he wants to do it, without a shadow of a doubt.
The run blocking grades for the Vikings offensive linemen last year were terrible. And because I'm so dedicated to the podcast, I actually looked at their averages through weeks 1 through 13.
I'm sorry, Jason.
And I have their grades.
That's kind of sad.
Through 13 weeks of football, the Minnesota Vikings offensive line never had a guy whose run blocking grade was over 62.7. And that was guard Tom Compton. Everyone else.
You could
what's a good run block? Is it have 100?
Make up 5 names and say that they are the offensive line for the Vikings, and I would have to believe you.
Okay, let's play.
I would have no other clue.
Let's play a game here. And this game's called. I'm gonna read off the 5 offensive linemen, and you're gonna tell me if you've recognized any of them.
You already said one, Mike Compton.
I haven't heard of him.
Doesn't he have a restaurant near the airport?
They have good steaks, I think.
Guard
him and company.
Guard Tom Compton. Tackle Riley Reif. Tackle Brian O'Neill. Guard Mike Rimmers. And center Brett Jones.
No, never heard of it.
Never heard of a single one of those players.
Well, I don't expect you to because their run blocking grades were horrendous.
Okay.
And they were all under 62. And in fact, 2 of them are in the 50s. And one of them, center Brett Jones' run blocking grade was in the 40s, which is horrendous.
So your point is not DeFilippo.
That's not my point.
Sounds like it.
I was only half paying attention when you started doing a dissertation on the Minnesota Vikings offensive line.
Because how do you explain all 5 guys are terrible? Is it that they're all terrible, or is it the system?
Let me ask you this. Can you say the exact same thing about the Jaguars offensive line last year?
No, because Andrew Norwell's pass blocking grade was in the high.
Yeah, but he was only on the offensive line till let's take it when he was after he wasn't playing.
We're talking about run blocking though as well.
Okay,
can we please change the subject? I'm losing interest in my own podcast.
At this point, we've got the Noah Bennett and Patrick Jackson listening. That's it.
All right.
I've even checked it. When it gets to this point, I'm switching to Spotify.
All right. I'm sorry that I had research on the Vikings.
But your research didn't back up the point of it's a positive thing.
I don't know what the point is, to be honest with you. Is it the system or is it the players?
You just thought, I looked this up. I'm including this in the show.
I thought you'd want to know what the run blocking...
I wasted 20 minutes of my life.
What the run blocking grade for the Vikings were. I just thought y'all maybe would be interested.
Was that Pro Football Focus?
Yes.
Okay, I was about to say, I wouldn't even know where to look that up.
Yeah.
That had to be the spot. All right. Well done, Jason. That's impressive. That's in deep.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, this next question is from Mike Wilbraham, and he's at Abe for Lincoln. And he says, many are talking about the Jags having a better year. However, I can't look past the schedule we have been dealt this upcoming year. What is the prediction in the room? My take, AFC South is looking super competitive. Slight improvement is in the cards. A good draft, maybe we go 9-7.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Here's the thing about the schedule. If you look at it right now on paper based on last year, it is a tough schedule. But the NFL is a year-to-year league, and you don't want to get too caught up in the schedule because you never know what is going to happen with a team from one year to the next. Case in point, the Jacksonville Jaguars. From last season, the season before that, you go to AFC Championship game. Everyone in the world is falling in love with the Jags. To the next year, they're picking 7th in the draft. So we can't freak out too much about it. But I'm going to give you all on March 27th, my AFC representative for the Super Bowl, and that is the Indianapolis Colts. I think the Indianapolis Colts are going to make it to the Super Bowl this coming up year, right out of our own division. I think they're going to take that next step. I am scared of that team more than anyone else in our division.
I think right now, March 27th, that James will change that prediction at least 4 times before the actual Super Bowl.
Before the actual Super Bowl or before the season starts? Before the season starts, no way. Unless Andrew Luck gets hurt.
Before the Super Bowl.
Well, I mean, if they nosedive, but if Andrew Luck is healthy throughout the season, they will remain.
He was healthy last season.
I know.
They were not that good.
They were all come on. They finished pretty good. I'm saying they're building. They're adding pieces. I like what they're doing. I'm scared of them. You just hate if you were picking the Titans, I'd feel the exact same way. I know you hate the Colts.
I do hate the Colts.
So
I just don't see them improving with one player to the level. I mean, they're building, but they're slow building. I mean, they're not building fast. I mean, they've been building for a while now. They've been picking in the top 5 for a while now.
Their offensive line shot straight up last year.
Well, they got the best offensive lineman almost in the league, if you ask some people.
Again, it was just horrible the year before.
But it's just one player, though. I mean, they still have a lot of issues. They have no defense. They have literally no defense.
I don't know. It's kind of a stretch, but I can't knock it. I don't want to play the Colts next year.
Yeah, I can knock it.
I mean, back to
terrible.
Terrible. Back to the question, though. I mean, 9-7. I mean, 9-7, I think would be a win. I think that probably saves a lot of jobs, possibly gives us a wild card berth. I would be happy with 9-7 next year. But do I think it happens? I mean, who knows? I'm not making that call right now. It's way too early to pick the games at this point.
It is. We don't even know who's on the team still.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've been rewatching games from last year, and every time I see a player make a play, I'm like, that guy's not on the team anymore.
Right.
It's like I don't know. I mean, I have to think about who we still have. So
and who we're going to get.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of additions. But yeah, 9-7 would be great. It's hard to make a prediction now. I feel optimistic, but at the same time, like I've been saying before, I'm a skeptic. I don't know if we really fit what Nick Foles is. And I guess we'll all see together this season.
Time will tell.
We do have another Facebook question that kind of ties into that.
People ask you questions on the show. I got to go home.
I'm starting to think you're making these up.
Yeah,
I'm not. I'm giving credit where credit's due. Some people ask multiple questions, and again,
I love it.
Back to Nick D'Amico, we're talking about free safety, and it kind of ties into the fact that out of everything they've done so far, the most baffling thing is letting Tayshaun Gibson go. He's been rock solid. He's played every game. He's played well. And we have like $18 million in salary cap right now. So unless there's like a big move that they're looking to make that I'm unaware of, it was kind of wasted money letting him go and to a division rival. So, I mean, has that been the worst thing that's happened at this point?
I don't think so, because he was demanding a lot of money. And with the way the NFL is kind of moving and trends, you don't need a high profile guy to play free safety anymore. Like, you can kind of put a guy that's, serviceable back there and spend the money elsewhere. So I think that's what they're thinking. And they're going to put a guy back there who's serviceable, like Gerard Wilson, and he'll be fine. And you pair him up with 2 great corners and a guy who plays in the box really well, Ronnie Harrison, and you have a really good secondary. So that's what I'm thinking there with Tayshaun Gibson. And I will stand by the fact that I think they'll make a trade for a tight end somewhere. And I think they'll bring in a guy that they may have to take on some of his money. A guy like Jimmy Graham, right? They have to take on like $5 million for Jimmy Graham. But, technically they could trade a second rounder. And if you're the Packers, you're getting a second rounder for Jimmy Graham, who didn't really do that much last year. I mean, is that a bad move for either team?
Oh, that was a good question. And the first part of that was a great answer.
I mean, I think if they let Gibson go, it's because they believe that they can get production out of Wilson at a much, much cheaper price. And so that's what they did. Period. I really don't have much more to add on that. I mean, I don't think they're obviously not going to draft high on safety. So I think they saw flashes of Wilson, but I heard Marone actually talking about him the other day on the radio saying, look, yeah, he had a great year, but he still has to prove it this year. He has to come in and earn the job. So we'll see what happens. Maybe they got Harrison in the 3rd round last year. Maybe they draft another one in that position. They have 2 third-round picks this year. You never know. But I think they believe enough in Wilson that they were willing to let Gibson go because they wanted to spend that money elsewhere.
I have to agree. I mean, you look at the rest of our secondary, and I mean, a lot of deficiencies could be made up with the fact that everybody else is a stud. So I think you can fill that hole. But good question. Thank you.
All right, I mentioned briefly about trading for Jimmy Graham, and that may seem fantasy to some of you. Well, there's a question kind of about acquiring a similar player, and that's from Jason Rat, and he's at RatHCP. And he says, can we talk about the idea of Des Bryant joining the Jags? Surprised this isn't more of a common conversation. It would be better than bringing in a 3rd or 4th round receiver.
Not quite sure why he thinks it should be more of a topic. I mean, he's been out a year already, old, long in the tooth. I mean, he did have a good, 800 yards receiving the last season with Dallas. I mean, I don't know. I just don't see Tom Coughlin bringing in someone like Des Bryant.
Didn't they have to amputate his foot? I mean,
he only came back and played 2 days before he tore his Achilles.
I mean, Achilles heel is...
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Achilles injury is like nothing to shake a stick at either. I mean, that's pretty major. Again, a lot of people don't come back from that, and if they do, they're not the same player, and you're adding that on top of somebody who's already, again, older and has got some seasons under his belt. It's kind of like the Jordy Nelson. Everybody wanted Jordy Nelson, and the dude retires today for a reason. I mean, they're getting older, man. I mean, they're big names, but they were big names 7-8 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, would you rather have Chris Conley or Des Bryant? I mean, the fact that you could make an argument for Conley shows you should probably just go for Conley.
Right.
Given the baggage that Bryant gives you, and who knows what's going to happen. I mean, I can't imagine he'd be an issue, but, I'd rather have Chris Conley. Interesting, though. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is the more I think about it. I actually forgot he got signed by the Saints and then got hurt immediately, so...
Well, that's it for Twitter questions.
Yeah, that's all I got. Sorry. Yeah. Is that it?
That's it for Twitter, yeah.
We did have some news come out in the last couple of days regarding rule changes. The main one that's getting all the headlines is the 1-year trial of refs being able to review non-PI calls, non-pass interference calls. You guys for or against that? What is your knee-jerk reaction to that news?
I kind of like it because I'm one that always gripes about this penalty ball that some teams play where it's 3rd and long and you have just as good of a chance of throwing a deep ball and trying to get a passing interference as you actually completing the 3rd and long. So you see teams do that. And some teams get those calls, the Patriots, right? I'm not a hater, but they are notorious for getting those calls. And I think it's good that we can go back and we can let everyone see that was not a pass interference. And if they call that, there's going to be like backlash like there is with this. So I think that'll prevent some of that cheesy ball that some teams are playing. So I'm cool to see it. And I'm cool to see the game last a little bit longer if they get it right,
It's not the answer. Again, I'll keep going back to the fact that the answer is not that. They're doing that. It extends games. It kind of placates people, and they can have commercials and whatever and earn more money during it. The answer is paid referees, full-time referees, professional referees. And when you do that, you're going to have ex-college players that didn't make it pro coming out and wanting to be referees. You have guys that is a career path for them, guys that can still run a 4.3, 4.4 and keep up with the game as opposed to overweight 35, 40-year-olds that are doing it as a part-time gig. I mean, it's
those
just...
refs right now are not even close to 35 or 40. They're like
even older.
65.
Yeah,
70.
exactly. I mean, point being, if it is, you pay them $100,000 a year, full time. The NFL makes bags of money. Why you don't do that is beyond me. That's the fix, and it will eliminate almost all this other stuff.
Well, that's kind of, I'm going to piggyback off that and say, I'm fine with it, but if they would just add one referee in the box, at every game that can make that call quickly, not because, listen, I'm not dying for games to be over. When the Jags play, I don't want the game to end. But at the same time, you can't spend an hour reviewing these because it's going to happen a lot. I don't know how many, if a coach throws the flag and then reviews and all that, and you only get a certain amount, but as long as they can do it speedily, but I wonder if it would almost be easier just to change the yardage on a pass interference call to, like in college, do 15 yards instead of spot foul. Because then, like Jason was saying, on a bomb, when they just throw it 50 yards and hope for some contact, well, you're not going to get it down there. And everyone's been talking about Hail Marys. What do you do then, with a Hail Mary? Because there's pass interference in every Hail Mary. Well, if it's a 15-yard penalty and you're throwing it from the 30, that, it doesn't matter it doesn't matter as much. So I think it'll be a trial year. They'll probably end up keeping it and tweaking it a little more. But again, I agree with Joey. They need full-time refs, and they need one up in the box that has a field view that can make a quick decision. I mean, when fans at home can make a decision faster than the refs, then how you are going about doing it is wrong. So fix that for all the penalties. That's my little rant.
I actually kind of like yelling at the TV because somebody made a bad call. That's kind of fun.
But now when it happens to your team, though.
The house
especially in the AFC Championship.
Yeah.
When Boye has perfect coverage.
Would Miles Jack being down actually be reviewable at this point?
He would. That play wouldn't.
Would not, as well as holding penalties that change the.
But
face
at
of
least
game.
the Bouye call wouldn't have been.
But again, you're opening kind of like the Pandora's box at this point of, hey, okay, now we're adding this, but a holding penalty could do the same thing, or a Miles Jack not being down, same thing. You can't just review everything, or games are going to be 6 hours long, and it just doesn't work. So again, I think it's a Band-Aid that is not the fix.
I don't think the NFL wants a perfectly called game, because then there's nothing to talk about afterwards. I mean, think about all that was said after the Saints, got robbed this year. That, even though it might be negative, it's still drums up all this stuff, and that human element is part of the game, and as old school as it might sound, I mean, it adds drama, it adds passion, and they want that, so I don't. What's that?
Year-round NFL, we're talking about referee calls at this point, and there's not a game been played.
Well, there was one of the biggest ones ever, and with the Saints and the Rams, so that's why. But I mean, I think you're right. Think about the gambling aspect to the human error,
right? The
industry lives off that,
Speaking of which, you guys buying a lotto ticket after this?
900 million?
Is it 900 now? I thought it was 7 something.
900.
900?
That's what it was earlier today.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not a big lottery guy. I'd rather gamble my money on sporting events I know will happen.
I don't. I'll tell you what, though. My team at work had a pool going, and I thought about it, and I was like, if they win, not only do I not win because I didn't throw in, but I also lose half my team. Talk about not winning the lottery.
Right. You unwon. Yeah.
I didn't even know the lotto was that high.
I thought it was at 74 or something million, but I mean, still, I'll take either one. Yeah, 750 million. Goodness.
James was right. I was less right.
So Mike Trout's contract, huh? That's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. I won't be either. I'll save my $2 for something else.
Yeah, something I'll
I'm just too cheap
to
throw $2 away.
I don't. I just can't do it.
No. All right, I think that's it, right?
Yep.
Is that it? Okay. Well, tomorrow is opening day for baseball, so go Braves. Excited about that. And if you are a Rays fan, as I think Jason is, then good for them.
It's nice to have a pitcher that won the Cy Young.
That's right, and a team that
is one of your pitchers in the rotation out of one, right?
Win every game.
Better than the Braves rotation right now. But anyway, excited about that. I can't wait for opening day. One of my favorite days of the year. So anyway, that's it for episode 61 of another Jags podcast. Listen, in all seriousness, we love and appreciate all of the questions and comments that you all send in. It makes our shows. So keep them coming, and if you have anything that you would like to critique us on, we'll take those as well. Bring them on. Again, thank you for listening. Spread the word. We want to see this podcast grow. We've been doing it for over a year now, and we love doing it. We're going to keep doing it just because we love the Jaguars and we love talking about them. That wraps up episode 61. As always, go Jags.